Aleph, Book of Kings 1, chapter 10. We're up to verse 14. We spoke about the Malkas Shiva, the queen of Sheba, and how impressed she was with Shlomo's wisdom and his wealth. And she gave him a lot of gifts, and she was impressed. She was really impressed with the all the different uh, things that he had, his palace, the I think the walkway. It says the the almog, atse almog, some type of a literally would mean atse almogim, almog wood. I see the commentaries translate it, although it does use the term almog wood or almog trees, but the commentaries say it's coral to some type of a special. It looks like trees because it's shaped that way. The branches looks like tree branches, but really it's not that doesn't grow. It's not a tree. It's from different creatures, the skeletons of creatures that somehow get after they die, they somehow it gets attached to each other, and they somehow and Shlomo was able to get like huge, very large pieces of this coral, and it was quite impressive. Either the sides were it, or the floor, the walkway, the railway, but it was made. It was quite impressive. People never saw such large pieces of it. They saw maybe small little uh, uh, jewelry made from it, but not pieces that size. Anyway, so this whole story of how impressed she was gives us an understanding not just about herself, but about the entire situation of the time. How impressed the whole world was with Shlomo HaMelech's greatness in all areas. Now, um, we're going to see now. It's going to talk about the gold and the throne that he built, and his horses, his chariots. So it's gonna mention all about his magnificent lifestyle and his throne. And of course, we have to understand this, as we've understood until now, that it's connected to the fact that Shlomo HaMelech seems to be have this unique ability to be totally selfless to Hashem, and yet live in the greatest wealth and luxuries. So he's living the luxurious lifestyle, but he's totally not. It doesn't really desire it. He desires it's only because he thinks it's good for Hashem. His for himself, he would be happy with living on a bread and butter or whatever. So they could live a very simple life and live in a small little apartment. But because this is a praise for Hashem, praise also for his father's kingdom. It's a praise for the kingdom of David. So the intent here is totally different than you would think. Anyone that lives this type of lifestyle, you would think that their mind is totally absorbed into themselves, very selfish and very wasteful and really, in truth, the Shlomo's interest was totally not that way. It totally did not. He didn't have that interest to the extent that, like, all of his meals, he had like a siyum. They would make a completion of of a tractate, or it was so the looks of it. If you just hear about it, might have sounded like he was just indulging in these pleasures, but when you got to know what was going on, you got a whole different picture. You saw how holy he was, and how special he was in all areas and righteousness and so on. And even though we're going to see that he did sin, but we always know that even Moshe Rabbeinu sort of sinned, and he wasn't able to go to Eretz Yisrael. So we have to understand that when righteous people sin, it's a sin on a very different level than we think. It says that he worshipped idols, but obviously he didn't worship idols. There's no question about it. That so what it means that he worshipped idols, which we'll read about, is obviously going to mean that he didn't rebuke his wives when they worshipped idols, or he didn't rebuke them enough, and he didn't put an end to it, and it was considered wrong to the extent maybe like he worshipped idols, and so on and so forth. All the sins that we will see, there was a reason why he felt it was permissible, and even though he was wrong, but it's not the typical type of sin that you would think of. Okay, now we're out on verse 14, and so the Queen of Sheba went home. She went with her servants, and now we'll talk about the gold. So verse 14 says the amount of gold that came to Solomon, to Shlomo, in 1 year was 666 talents of gold, and there's a discussion among the commentaries here. This refers to that year, or it was every year? Yeah, was this the annual what he normally got every year, or was this that specifically that year? Because we know he got 120 talents of gold from Hiram and 120 from the Queen of Sheba, and they did they sent a fleet to this place where there was a lot of gold, and they brought back gold. So altogether, the place was called Ophir. They sent a ship over there, and they got 420 talents of gold over there. So 420 plus 240 is 660, and pretty close to the 666. So does it mean that that year they got that much, or was this not including this year? That like this year they got an extra 660, but in general they would get that. And this, it says, besides the tax income that came from merchants and the commerce of the spice peddlers, from all the vassal kings and the governors of the land. So that's means that he had a lot coming in. It wasn't just he had wealth and he was just spending, but he had wealth that was coming in and he was spending. Yes, Susan.
Rabbi, did you say it was 666 or 660?
So there is a discrepancy here. If you add it together, it seems like it only reaches 660. But the verse says 666. So he must have gotten
Why
another
is
six.
that? Why is that?
Yeah, so he must have gotten another six, just on the side. That was besides these. These were big numbers. It maybe just leaves out the little change. You call it like change when you deal with such large amounts of wealth. For us, it's for us maybe $100 bills you wouldn't call change. But when you deal with billions, they look at $100 bills as that's a little change, So they had.
This is a little creepy. Don't you think it's a little strange that discrepancy? Don't you think it's kind of odd?
So it's not necessarily a discrepancy. It doesn't have to tell us all of the details of where it came from. The Torah doesn't. It happens to the verse. All it's telling us is that either it's saying that year he actually got, in addition to all the other wealth, he got an extra 666. Now, if you want to dig into that, you can figure out where 660 of it came from. That's up to you if you want to figure that out. It's not necessarily trying to tell you every detail of it. You get what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't have to tell you where it came from. It just happens to be that we can figure out 660 of it because we can calculate the 120 plus 120 plus 400 plus 420. You can calculate most of it yourself, but you don't have to do that. You could just say, oh, interesting, he got, even 1 year he actually got like a crazy amount of extras in addition to what he was always getting. Or according to the other opinion, he always got that, and it's not even talking about this. So it's totally not surprising that it's a discrepancy, because it's not a discrepancy. According to the other translation is that there was this was not calculating the extras of that year from Hiram, from the Queen of Sheba, and from their travel to Ophir. It's not including that. So that's besides, he got every year he would get the 660. So that's
Okay,
that's another way
all
of
right.
explaining it. Okay, so in any event,
Rabbi,
yes,
I'm just looking up on Wikipedia,
yeah,
and how much is a talent?
yeah,
So it's under talent measurements in Wikipedia. So it's according to the Babylonian weights, talent is approximately 66 pounds and 9 ounces. So if somebody wanted to figure out how much that would be in modern times, that would be a lot of money. That's just one talent.
right.
If you want, you can do the math, but just to give you an idea.
That's
66 and 3/4 pounds is one
how much is
talent.
a pound? How much is a pound of gold worth today?
I'm going to look it up. While you keep on going, I'm going to look it up.
So, so these were the gifts that he received. King Solomon, we're up to verse 16. King Solomon made 200 shields of beaten gold. The Hebrew word for the shield is tsina. And the understanding is, because we're going to have another word that's also a shield called maginim. So the understanding is that the tsina was it's sort of like a shield. The I'm sorry, the tsina was on both sides. It was like a much larger shield. It covered him from the front, from the back. The magain was smaller. So anyway, it says that he made these 200 shields of beaten gold. He would put 600 measures of gold into each shield. And it says that in 300 bucklers of beaten gold, he would put 3 manas of gold into each buckler. So
Rabbi,
yes,
according to the current rate, 1 pound of gold is $29,500.
So it sounds like a nice amount of money he had.
Yeah,
If each talent was that multiplied by 66 or
right.
60 something, yeah. So that's quite a nice amount of money. Um,
And how many talents? 666 talents.
166. Yeah.
Okay,
So
I'll check it. I'll come back to you when I get
so
the price.
yeah, 20 times, yeah, so that sounds pretty good. So this the so
Rabbi, Rabbi, he
yeah,
did this all for God.
that's correct. And for
That's
his
beautiful.
father's kingdom, that it should
Right,
be an honor to the kingdom of David.
right. Beautiful.
So it says the king placed them in the house of the forest of Lebanon, which basically refers to the palace. And uh, the verse over here does mention that he made these shields out of gold. The question is, how good is gold as a shield? It's in fact, it not only regular gold. This was a special type of gold that was pliable, or like a bendable. It was soft. It was pure, very pure. And would that be really valuable as a shield? So some say that the purpose was not really for uh, uh, shields, but more decorative. Um,
Rabbi,
Others understand it that it was obviously very thick, so that it would have been protective, would have been properly good protection. Um, and and somehow they got it to work. I don't know, I guess if they did use it. Yes, Moshe.
Weren't those shields used to defeat the Egyptian army when he was after he was exiled or by his brother? They, for reflection purpose, I guess they all the Egyptian armies fell into a pit or something that to shine the light as a reflection that they became confused and they went into a pit.
All right, we'll have to see if we come across that. I don't remember such a thing. But you sounds like you're referring to something that you know of as a fact. So hopefully we'll come up to it. So
Rabbi, I got the final amount.
Final amount.
$1.3 billion.
Uh-huh. Okay. That's a nice amount in those days.
Yeah, yeah.
So so here in verse 18, it says the king made a great throne of ivory and overlaid it with sparkling gold. The throne had 6 steps, a rounded top to the throne at its back, arms on either side at the place of the seat, with 2 figures of lions standing next to the arms, and 12 figures of lions standing there on the 6 steps on either side. Nothing like it had ever been made for any of the kingdoms. So he made this incredible throne, and the lions, he had lions on each of the 6 steps of on each side of the 6 steps of the throne, and so which basically meant 12 lions. And the Midrashim add a lot of little insights over here as to what was the meaning of these 12 these lion of the 6 steps. What was the purpose of the 6 steps? So each time he would go on one of the steps, there was a voice would call out about the 3 prohibitions for kings, and then the other 3 prohibitions. In other words, there's prohibitions of a king having too much gold and silver, having too many wives, having too many horses, and then there's a prohibition about judging people, not to favor one over the other, and so on, not to take bribes. And so there are 6 rules and laws that every time he would go on the throne, he would be reminded of them. Now, we have to keep in mind that if Shlomo HaMelech was building this throne and he wanted it to teach him not to have too many wives and not to have too many horses, so what was he doing? Every time he went on the throne, it seems like he would have a reminder not to have too much wealth. Seems like he was a hypocrite, maybe. Like, what was he doing? He would go on the throne, and of course, it would remind him of the prohibitions, these 6 prohibitions, and 3 of them which seemingly he transgressed. So how exactly was he getting onto the throne without feeling guilty? How would he look at himself in the mirror? And the answer is that he obviously did not feel like he transgressed them. Like, he specifically wanted these reminders because he said, for me, I'm allowed to. He had excuses for each of the laws, why for him it was permissible, even though this law was very important to him. And he realized that for anyone else and for his kid, whoever's going to take over the throne after after him, they're going to have to know these laws. And just because, so he understood that for him it didn't apply. And why they didn't apply had to do with the fact that each of these laws say a reason. All the rest of the laws of the Torah, like, it doesn't tell us reasons. Why should you not eat milk and meat? What's so bad about a cheeseburger? what's so bad about eating pig? It doesn't say a reason. It doesn't say you have to why you have to slaughter the meat. So what's so bad if you don't you don't follow? Why do you need to put tefillin on? It doesn't say a reason really. There's a lot of laws keeping Shabbos. There's just a reminder, memories, but it doesn't give us like a solid reason of why I have to, why it's so important. And um, and because of that, it gives us the understanding.
Rabbi, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you. All you were talking about defines us as Jews. That's extremely important.
What are you talking about? What is extremely
All
important?
of the laws, everything
law,
that we
right.
do. Yes, that
Yeah.
defines us as different from the rest of the world.
Okay. But the thing is, there's a reason for the laws, but it doesn't say it in the Torah. And we follow the laws because we don't know the reasons. So we have no way. God doesn't want us finding excuses because he basically gives us these laws without giving any reasons.
But we don't need God's reasons. We don't need reasons from God. He's
No,
supreme.
it's not that we need them, but you have to understand how Shlomo HaMelech was thinking. And the way he was thinking is that the Torah doesn't give reasons. And the reason the Torah doesn't give reasons is because these are meant for everyone to do no matter what. However, in the few examples where the Torah gives a reason, those are cases where there might be one individual in the whole lifetime of mankind. There might be someone who might have it might be like an exception to the rule, or find a scenario where there's an exception to the rule. And that was where Shlomo HaMelech felt that he had he felt he had this mission even from Hashem, that he's supposed to take advantage of these laws where it has a reason, and that he's supposed to understand that this reason doesn't apply to him. And it to most of his life, it didn't really apply to him. And he was right for most of his life. But Hashem didn't like it, and he took away some of his wisdom. And by doing that, Shlomo HaMelech ended up sinning. And Hashem did that because he wants to teach us that we should not ever, take the reasons into account of the mitzvahs. And Hashem wants it in a way that's like a blanket, no excuses and no exceptions. But Shlomo HaMelech did consider himself an exception to the rule in these scenarios, because he was so given over to Hashem that why would his wives how could they ever have any impact on him? And they weren't able to have any impact on him. And the only thing that they were able to do at the end of his life was after Hashem took away some of his wisdom. And he ended up not rebuking them enough. So the point is that in most of his life, he was correct. And he had his excuse of why he thought this was what was meant for him and what was his mission. But in truth, it wasn't. It was ultimately not the right thing. And as we see we'll see more about it, and mainly in next chapter about the. I'm only mentioning it because everyone seems to know all about his wives and his sin. So I sort of like can't go on unless I tell you a little, give you a little insight into it. Even though really we should wait for next chapter, but it's a little hard to keep going if people. People are going to be, it's going to be hard for people to relate to. Yes, David.
Yeah, good idea. This thing with the mitzvahs and the reasons. A lot of people thought that when they discovered the connection between eating pig and the disease trichinosis, and people said, "Oh, this is the reason why God forbid people to eat pig, because of trichinosis." And then when they discovered that they can have refrigerators that would preserve the meat and it wouldn't cause trichinosis, it would prevent trichinosis, they said, well, now we found the reason, now we found the cure. Now we don't have to forbid eating pork anywhere. Now we can eat pig because we discovered how to prevent trichinosis. and it's specifically that idea that it was not because of trichinosis. That was just happened to be a side issue.
Right.
But the reason was, we don't know the reason, because Hashem wanted, you could say all kinds of reasons, because it wallows in filth and excrement and all this, all these different reasons, but they're not really the reasons. Those are just side issues.
Right, right. Well, what I would add to what I said before is based, in connection with what you just said, is that Shlomo HaMelech was the epitome of knowledge and of wisdom. And so he knew and he understood the depth of the Torah, so it made sense for him to sort of have this ability to really, take advantage almost of his knowledge and utilize it to that extent and say, well, I understand the reason that it says in the Torah, and I understand the full reason, fully. And so he was following his great understanding, which Hashem blessed him with. In any event, so we're still really before these stories, but we have on these. It's applicable here as well, because it's the 6 steps that he would have to walk up every time he went onto his throne. These steps, they were reminders of each of these laws, and he felt that he's following the rules, because he's happened to be an exception, but he really follows the laws. And now the steps also, they had these lions, and the lions would actually they were capable of scaring people. Like they had some type of a miraculous life to them, where they would, if someone came and was a false witness and came to Shlomo's court, so the lion would roar and scare the person. And when they started lying, they would stop immediately. They would retract right away from their falseness and falsehood, and it would cause them to. It would cause people. It made people to be more righteous. Like the lions were very. They were made of gold, but there was some type of a miraculous element that Hashem allowed to present itself here. In addition to the fact that there was a lot of mechanism involved in creating this throne, because you would step onto one step, and the animals would cause the stepping on one of the first step would actually cause the animals to move around, and ultimately when he reached the top step, the animals would lift him up and put him on his throne and he would so it was like there was a lot of different things moving around. And when the people over the generations, the other kings, they were all jealous of this incredible throne. They tried to stole it, and different kings over, the problem is they had that tough time trying to use it, because one of the kings became lame when he tried to step on it. The lion whacked him. He was standing obviously in the wrong position, or miraculously, it gave him such a whack that, because the lion moved this way, and because you step here and then the lion moves, and he got so he was lame for the rest of his life. So the throne had much more than just the wealth and the beauty. It was a entire magnificent. It was almost like electronic, even though there was no electronics then. It was really an incredible feat of perfect craftsmanship, of how they were able to build it in such a way. So, and then of course there's a lot of Kabbalistic ideas as well that that go into the different numbers, and the animals. The animals were there were other animals there as well besides these lions, and there was an element that it was a corresponding to Hashem's um, uh, throne in heaven. So this is there's some type of a connection there between the way Solomon's throne looked and Hashem's throne in heaven, the chariot that we read about in different haftorahs. Yes, Yudis.
Yes, I was wondering, I thought we were not allowed to have statues or replicas or toys of non-kosher animals in the
Yeah.
house. When did that law come about? Was it in effect then?
Yeah, so there's a lot of discussion about that here on this story. That's a good point. That the simple understanding is that this was a command from Hashem, like Hashem told him how it should be. So because of that, it was permissible.
Rabbi, suppose these images were holographic. They weren't actually made out of something solid.
Well, I don't think
That's
that
how
makes
they
a difference.
moved.
Yeah.
And,
I don't think it makes a difference.
right.
Rabbi, I have a concern about the fact that there would be some who might interpret those lions as avodah zarah, and Shlomo had children, and maybe that his wives, who were apparently in some cases not faithful to their conversion commitment to him, that should have been very disturbing to the household. And one would think maybe that when these women violated their commitments to Shlomo, that he should have sent them out of the palace and divorced them.
Mm-hmm. So you're connecting the lions with the avodah zarah problem that he had with his wife.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
It may be that Hashem directed him to have these lions, but on the other hand, it's problematic that those kind of images had caused all kinds of problems to Klal Yisrael in the past.
So why do you think? I mean, I would agree with you if the problem was they were worshiping those lions. But if they were worshiping idols, he happened to have lions in his throne, I don't know that one has anything to do with the other. You know what I mean? Like it could be that, if he got a tradition, also if he was told bipia dibur, that pia dibur to Hashem told him that we had a special tradition that he's supposed to, that this is how it should look and this is how it should be. So it would seem that was acceptable.
Rabbi?
You know what I mean? Like I don't know that just because people were worshiping idols, and especially they weren't worshiping these idols, Besides, I'm not exactly sure to what extent that prohibition applies. I know they talk about it, but then if you think about it practically, I mean, what what is the actual ruling of such such items? Is it a prohibition of owning or creating or even having? I mean, kids play with dolls and with different animals, so I'm not exactly sure. I'm agreeing with, your wife brought up that this is a problem, and it does talk about it. There's a Talmudic, there's the Talmud on the side of the Talmud, one of the commentaries brings this up, and he mentions what I said. But in truth, I have to really look more into it because I'm not exactly sure if to what extent it really is a problem. You know what I mean? Like people do play with teddy bears and other types of animals that are fake. So I'm not exactly sure how it's not something
I thought the teddy bears were forbidden. I remember way back many years ago, I took a trash bag, threw out all my teddy bears. I had a collection of them.
So there's a concept of not having non-kosher animals. With kids shouldn't look at non-kosher animals. You know, unless they're in a zoo, which, you know, of course, those are real. But the non-kosher animals doesn't have to do with idol worship, because what about kosher animals? You're not allowed to worship kosher animals. You know, then you would have to throw out your sheep as well. If you have a little sheep animal, or you know, or other animals that are kosher, a cow, you know. But you know, there are people who are strict not to you know, look at
Is
non-kosher
that
animals.
is
But
that just Chabad law then?
yeah, it's not a law. It's a
Tradition, minhag?
a minhag type of thing. Yeah.
Oh,
Rabbi,
I don't have
Rabbi,
to. If I had buy a doll, I don't have to smash its nose. Is that just a minhag?
I know there have been this talk about it. You know what I mean? These discussions have been talked about, and there's much ink that's been spilled on this. But in practice, if you go to any rabbi's house that has little kids, they have dolls, and I don't think they've smashed the nose or the ear or something. I'm just telling you in practice, you know, deserves to be looked into. You're right. We should, you know, do your research, but from just a practical perspective, I'm not aware of people breaking. You know, I know I've read about people doing it, and you know, there have been rabbis maybe that have done it, but from at least my experience, and I don't know if anyone else here has experience and has asked halachic questions about it, but I'm just telling you, practice. I don't know that many that everyone does it. Yes, David.
I have, but I think Moshe wanted to say something. But I have experience. But
go ahead, David. Go first. Go ahead.
oh, so when we lived in Toronto, so I used to practice acupuncture, and I had an acupuncture mannequin. And when I consulted with Rabbi David Shochet, he told us to take a knife and cut off the tip of the nose.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, but did,
huh? What's
did,
that?
did your kids have any dolls? Did they ever play with dolls or
You know what?
animals?
When in the late 70s, like we got married in 1980, so the Rebbe spoke right around that time about not kosher animals,
Right.
and we didn't buy any non kosher animals. We made sure I went to the store to get a rocking horse, and I got a rocking duck. It was a rocking.
Right.
It was like
Yeah.
this big
Yeah.
FAO Schwartz in New York. It was the biggest toy store in the world,
So you had
and
a duck.
they had a rocking duck,
Uh-huh.
but
And you didn't
not a
cut
rocking
off,
horse.
did you cut off the nose?
No, but it was for we cut off the nose of the human because it was a human thing with the acupuncture with the human
Right.
being, but not
Right.
from an animal. But the
Uh-huh.
Rebbe, there was a I don't want to take up too much time, but there was a not kosher cartoon figure called Mendel the Mouse. I don't know if you ever
Uh-huh.
heard of Mendel the Mouse,
Yeah.
and the Rebbe put Mendel the Mouse out of business in one shot because he spoke about for bringing the idea of, and he spoke Dafka regarding Mendel the Mouse. He said that they should have a child's character, a cartoon character that is the non-kosher animal is not proper. And right away, Mendel the Mouse went out of business. And they had to bring another, I don't know if there's another character, but Mendel the Mouse was no longer.
Oh,
Uh,
I was
Uh-huh.
I was even informed when I was about to sew skirts my rabbi's daughters to be sure there are no animal characters on the fabric. So no pictures of
Right.
animals.
Right. Right.
Right. Which I already knew I wouldn't have done that. But they made me to be sure of that. No animals, no non-kosher animals.
Hello.
So
Reb,
yeah, Moshe, did you want to say something?
I wanted to say that the cherubs that were in the temple, they were also winged. They had wings, and there's two of them, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? There were two of them. Why they were also that's also a form of avodah zorah if you think about it. I also want to say the Lion of Judah itself. I mean, it's a non-kosher animal. I mean, and this is what I don't understand. Why is a non-kosher animal? I don't understand it has strength, koach, but why do we look to a non-kosher animal for strength? Why there are other animals that are maybe just as strong in different ways. You know, why don't we use them? But my main concern is that the cherubs, they were winged. They were animals with wings, practically. You know.
Or people with wings, even worse.
The people, yeah, they're almost like there's a creature in Greek mythology that has that's like this part has part it's part horse and part I don't know, falcon or something like that, and it's got wings. So I'm trying to understand this as you're talking, as we're having this discussion.
I have the answer.
Right.
The answer is because people didn't come up with this stuff. Hashem came up with this stuff. So Hashem said you should make cherubs that look like little babies, and he specified what it's supposed to look like. And we did it according to the specifications of Hashem. People didn't sit down and make up the Lion of Judah or the Zev. I think it's Binyamin is the wolf. These were all from Hashem. These
But what
were
I'm
people.
asking is that is it all right for a young child to have an animal like that as a toy? If that's the case, they could actually replicate these toys and give them to kids to play with and have the wings go up and down. You know, I mean, it's not.
Anyway, bottom line is here. I just mentioned that they do talk about dolls in halacha, as I told you, and I just pulled something up over here on one of the websites. There's obviously numerous stuff that you'll find, but with regard to dolls, I mean. He brings there's a responsa from a famous big Rav, the Maharit, from the 17th century, and he writes that the prohibition only applies to permanent items, not to temporary items like a doll. And if it's temporary, nobody will think it could have been used for idolatry, and therefore he says these dolls that children play with, they're permitted because they're temporary. Now. Presumably, they write after they write about this that specific leniency, he says, it could be because in his days the toys were not so durable, but a doll might have been made from a piece of cloth on top of a stick or a rod. It looks temporary, but today they last for years, so maybe there could be a problem with the dolls, of today. And on the other hand, he says. A Barbie doll made of plastic is disposed. Plastic is generally known for disposable, like it's something that's disposable, but still it's kept for years. So there's room to be, to question that. Then he brings another responsa from the pre-Hasada that he adds that there's a difference between two cases of finding a utensil with a forbidden image on it. If you find a respectable utensil, then you must be concerned that someone used it for idolatry. If it's a disgraceful utensil, something not fit for use in a proper ceremony, you can assume it was never used for idolatry. So he says, if you give something to a child to play with, it's considered disgraceful, does not fall under the prohibition because it would never be used for idolatry. Dolls, stuffed animals, various forbidden images are permitted since a child schleps them around on the floor, treats them disrespectfully. This reasoning applies to dolls and action figures today. According to this opinion, a Barbie doll is permissible. And he brings from Rabbi Braun, Sha'arim Tziyana B'Halacha, Rabbi Yosef, they quote this ruling approvingly. And then, but I guess maybe that's why here, maybe that's why the rabbis ask about this in the Talmud. This situation maybe is worse because it's like made out of gold and it's on the throne. It seems like a very permanent, type of item that's not just disgrace. It's not a disgrace. It's a very special honor, so to speak. So maybe that would be a reason why this is considered to be more strict. He says many authorities are uncomfortable with these leniencies. They recommend defacing any dolls or sculptures by removing a nose or an ear. So the truth is, sculptures, I didn't discuss. Sculptures are a problem. Sculptures are a much more serious problem. In this way, you can still have the sculpture while completely avoiding the prohibition. So he brings from Rabbi Wozner, who was this past generation. He says it's obvious that one may not own a doll because of the prohibition. That you must deface it if you want to keep it. And Rav Sternbach says that while some authorities are lenient, someone who is God-fearing will follow a strict view and deface a doll or a sculpture. Conclusion, opinions about dolls range from one end to the other. Some authorities believe that the prohibition does not apply today to anything that is not an actual idol. Others find an exemption for toys. Yet others believe we should be strict. Brings Um, um, yeah. Anyway, so that's basically the some of the opinions, you know. So there's obviously room for leniency, but if someone wants to be strict, definitely with regard, I think there's a big difference between a sculpture, which you consider more of a something of art that's like fancy, something you know you're showing off, versus a doll that you give to kids that they throw around and it gets broken, or you know the kids are stepping on it, who knows what, throwing it around. You know, it's a different story than. But in any event, there is room for being strict. Now, with regard to here, so the commentaries do talk about it. Again, there's a Teves about this in the side of the Gemara in Yuma that talks about it and deals with this question. So that's just to touch upon this. We
Rabbi,
are,
years
yeah.
ago, I had a shul in my house for a short period of time, and somebody donated one of those old time covers that goes in front of the Sefer Torah, in front of the Iron Kodesh, and it had lions on it. You know, the two
Uh-huh.
lions on the side. And this one particular Sephardi rabbi, he didn't want to adopt it in the house because it had non-kosher animals.
Uh-huh.
Even though it was like an old time mantle that somebody donated
Uh-huh.
from years and years ago, but
Right.
he was reluctant to daven there.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I would think if it doesn't have ears or it doesn't, it's like, you know, those type of things that like they're missing some of the features of the face. So maybe that could be a leniency. But again, I'm not, you know, proficient in these laws, but yeah, it
I
could
don't
be
know
a
if you ever
lenient.
saw. I don't know if you ever saw these pictures.
Yeah,
It's like two
of
standing
course.
lions. They're
Yeah.
standing lions and they're holding up.
They're not, what do you mean? They're attached to the paraichas. They're
Yeah, but
sewed into it.
yeah, but they're standing. They're like standing on their back feet and they're holding up the Torah or something in the front feet.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Well, I've seen them on the curtain that they're just like so it's sewed on, but it doesn't look
Right.
so they don't look
Rabbi,
so alive. Yes, Moshe.
I want to say one other thing. When Aharon was being confronted with having to build a golden calf for the kahal that was demanding that he builds it, he had to constantly deform it so that he wouldn't get the kahal to worship the golden calf that he was building. He knew that he had to buy time until Moshe Rabbeinu came down from the mountains, so he was deforming as time was going on. He was trying to keep them from worshiping the golden calf. I've heard this from many Rebbeim that this is what
Uh-huh.
he did. So it wouldn't appear attractive enough where they'd actually substitute the golden calf for Moshe.
Uh-huh. Interesting. Interesting. Thanks for that insight. It's not something that it says. It's you know something that maybe I know that's not you don't normally hear that insight. That's like something added to the story. New and more information. Very nice. Okay, so the verse that we're up to is we're up to verse 21. All of the King Solomon drinking vessels were gold, and all the fixtures of the house of the forest of Lebanon were gold. And um, you know, there was it says there was no silver, for silver was not considered of any worth in the days of Solomon. Now, this is really incredible. Like silver was worthless. There was you know gold. That was what they were into. Silver was it didn't have any worth. Loy nechshav l'meuma wasn't worth anything. Now there is a deeper understanding here based on what we were saying earlier that people in Shlomo HaMelech's day they didn't consider you know material things of any value. There was no interest in money. Ein kesef ein kesef loy nachshav b'mei shlema l'muma. There was like it wasn't considered important. People cared for more spiritual things. I mean, they saw the Beis Hamikdash. They cared for wisdom and connecting to Hashem. You know, that was what was of interest. A little insight into the wording over here of that the kesef was not important to them. But the verse continue. The next verse continues. For the king had a ani Tarshish. Ani over here means from the word ania, a boat. The boat of Tarshish, or the fleet, the Tarshish fleet. The king had a Tarshish fleet in the sea with the boat of Hiram, with the Hiram's fleet. Once in 3 years, the Tarshish fleet would arrive carrying gold, silver, ivory, and monkeys and peacocks. So it seems like they found this country that there was a lot of gold, and they would take as much of it back as they could, and all these other special. If only we knew where that was, you know. But they would travel there and bring it, and they would constantly every 3 years they would make it back. Now we know about the city of Tarshish from the story of Jonah. Jonah was on a boat heading to Tarshish. We don't know, of course, we don't know where it is, but some say that it's in Africa or Tunisia, Spain. Anyway, it would bring this gold, silver, ivory, monkeys, and peacocks. So that must have been, what were the monkeys and the peacocks doing? So some say that was they were maybe some type of entertainment or luxury that people considered in very they considered it was considered something special. And possibly this might be the beginning of the downfall. The fact that they were involved in the monkeys and peacocks, like as if possibly this is the beginning of the downfall. Although I don't know, it's a little hard to say that. It seems like we're still talking about the greatness of King Shlomo here. It says King Solomon became greater than all the kings of the land in wealth and in wisdom. And I would, just a thought that maybe monkeys and peacocks were probably something. I would think that it has something to do with the ability to, not necessarily as entertainment, an element of indulgence in indulgence in luxuries, but rather it's the ability to broaden one's mind and one's understanding. So it could be that monkeys and peacocks were, and also Shlomo HaMelech understood the language of animals. Maybe, different animals. Maybe it was Shlomo HaMelech wanted to understand, wanted to know. He had the wisdom.
Rabbi,
there must be some spiritual reason. Yes.
In verse 21, it talks about gold and pure gold.
Yeah.
So gold. So I just checked it up. Gold is like 14 karat gold.
Uh-huh.
And pure gold is 24 karat gold. The difference between gold and pure gold.
And what's the difference in
pure
price?
Gold is like there's just that I'll check, but there's a big difference. 24 karat gold is almost totally gold. There's like just a couple remnants, but it's very soft. It's hard to mold into anything.
Right. Well, but the thing is, when we spoke about the shields, it used a different term. It used the term Zahav Shachot, and which does mean a good gold, but it doesn't use the same. What's the word here in the Hebrew for the gold in 21 was Zahav Sagur. I wonder if it means the same thing. It switches.
It seems like the Sagur is the pure gold. That's like the 24 karat gold, and the regular gold.
Yeah.
The regular gold was like 14 karat gold.
Yeah, but the only thing is, earlier we spoke about the shields. It also uses this term that means that it was you could pull it like shiva, like wax. So it sounds like the other was also pretty pure, was not a regular commentaries use the term toiv, a very good gold. So it was, maybe there's somewhere in between. Maybe it's a little, maybe there's differences between these two golds, but I don't think it's, the 14. It's probably maybe a different level, maybe a 22 versus a 24.
Because when you're saying it was like wax, that fits the description, because pure gold is very pliable.
Yeah, but then it uses a different word later when it talks about pure, when it says sagor. So I
Right.
get, in here what it means is it was brought into into the furnace to make it, remove any of the impurities. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so yeah, it seems like maybe they're both very similar golds, but it's interesting. He uses a different word. I guess maybe they're very, very close to each other in level of purity. Anyway, the verse continues and says that so the boats, they would come back every 3 years, and then it says, verse 23, King Solomon became greater than all the kings of the land in wealth and in wisdom. So we're still talking about the greatness of Shlomo HaMelech and how incredible it was. Now, one of the things that it seems like the verses are telling us here is that in addition to Shlomo getting blessed with wisdom, which we read about, we read how the Malka Sheva, the Queen of Sheba, was so impressed with, and all the people were impressed with. But it also tells us how the promise that Hashem gave him, that he would have wealth as well, that also came true. And that's what the verses are emphasizing. That this all was completely fulfilled by Hashem. Hashem made a promise, and it spells it out. Now, another interesting thing is that Shlomo HaMelech is the 15th from Avram Avinu. He's the 15th. If you do the generations, he's number 15. Now, the moon is, interestingly enough, the moon is the largest complete on the 15th day. It wanes and waxes, and the 15th day it's complete. So that's what it says. We always mention in the Kabbalistic writings about Shlomo HaMelech that it's kaima siharo ba'ashlemusa, that he was at a time when the moon was shining, it was complete, it was a full moon, which basically means that he reached the peak. He reached the highest, the highest level, but and so he is the 15th, which it fits with this idea that he reached this level being the 15th. Okay, so it says that he became greater than all the kings of the land, and the whole world wanted to see Shlomo, to hear his wisdom, which God had put in his heart. And each one of them would bring his gift: silver articles, golden articles, clothing, weapons, spices, horses, and mules, each year's due in its year. So each one would bring, they would bring their stuff each year, and they would, come and so on. Now, verse 26 is Solomon assembled chariots and horsemen. He had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 riders. He kept them in the chariot cities and left some with the king in Jerusalem. So he didn't keep them all in one place. He had them all spread out, chariot cities, and he left some there in Jerusalem and Yerushalayim. And in verse 27, King Solomon made silver in Jerusalem as common as stones. He made cedars as abundant as sycamores in the lowland. So here, the commentaries do deal with a problem. Like, I thought he didn't even have silver, or silver was worthless. And now it says it's not worthless, it was like stones. So the commentaries, they expound on, well, it's a Gemara, really. The Gemara really asked this question, that was it worthless? Was silver worthless, or did it have a little value like stones? Stones have some value because they build walls from them, and they make some beautiful designs from them. So the question was, why does it say earlier that it was worthless? The silver meant nothing, and now it makes it like it did have some value. And so basically the commentaries say that it depends on before the king married the daughter of Pharaoh and after the king married the daughter of Pharaoh. Before there was so much righteousness that the wealth was so there was so much that silver was worthless, completely worthless. And after Shlomo married the daughter of Paroi, so the prosperity, the wealth, it diminished, and therefore silver became of a little, became a little value. Also, she spent so much money. She seemingly that also led to their diminishing of their she had so many workers and who knows what. But so the Gemara says that before and after, there was a difference between before they got married and after. Now another interpretation of that is that before he got married, the silver was not important to him because his main focus was the spiritual. And after his marriage, basically he got involved in more in indulging in these type of things. So to some extent, whatever that means. So it gave a little significance to these to wealth, and therefore it says it was like stones. So that's another interpretation. And another meaning of it is that in Jerusalem they used it as the threshold. Instead of using stones as the threshold, they used silver as the threshold. Still was very wasn't important, but it was the pasuk here is not a contradiction to before, because it doesn't mean that it was valued as stones. It means that they did use it. It was worthless relative to compared to gold. They didn't consider it special, but instead of using stone, they would use silver. All right, we're going to stop here. Zygazund, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you, Rabbi. Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.